Hello, we want to welcome you all today to the introduction and overview of the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court presentation from the Resource Division for Law and Policy at the Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. And I wanted to invite Natalie Stites, my co-presenter, to welcome us and open in a good way.
Thank you, Anna. I just want to say welcome to everyone and say a few words to welcome everyone to the call and to have a good webinar. Tungashila, Awankatanko, and Cheese. Please let us all have a good day today to impact the youth we are all working for today. With special thoughts to everyone standing up for Native Nations in Washington, D.C. today. Mizakia Asin.
Thank you, Natalie. And I want to say welcome. My name is Anna Rangel Clough, and I work here in the Resource Division for Law and Policy at the Training and Technical Assistance Center. And I am Muskogee Creek and Yuchi, and I live here in Oklahoma, where the center is located.
Hi, and I am Natalie Stites, and I am also a TA coordinator under the Resource Division for Law and Policy, and I work with Anna on a daily basis to address the needs of the tribal grantees. And I am a tribal member at Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. Welcome and thank you.
So we wanted to pause for a minute and let Nick Birdshead give us a tech review. So if you are logged on the computer, he's going to give you a couple of instructions right now.
Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you have any chat discussion about the webinar, go ahead and type it into the chat box. Feel free to chat with whoever is available. If you have any questions specifically about the webinar or any questions in general, please direct those to the Q&A box. At the end of the webinar, we will go through and read each question and answer those in the order they were received. And also, in the middle, you'll see a presentation for download. That is actually the PowerPoint and the PDF version of the webinar that is going to be done today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And so today we're here to talk about the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And we want to discuss today a brief history of what wellness courts are and how they developed. Specifically, we're going to be discussing the supporting document called the Tribal 10 Key Components. And we will also be discussing the development of a juvenile healing to wellness court. And so most of the developmental steps that we'll be discussing today would be for newly developing projects. However, if you have an existing project, many of the points that we'll make today will probably resonate with you. And so with that, we're going to get started. So go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, I see that we have Nancy Seiler on our participant list right now, and we have a question for you. Is do you currently work within a Healing to Wellness Court? And if you do, what's your role?
And you can use the chat box at the bottom to respond. So most of the information in this is going to be a broad overview, and so anyone listening is going to be able to gather information about the Healing to Wellness Court process for juvenile participants. And so we hope that whatever your role is, that you're able to get some information that will support how you serve within the court system. So I see that Nancy's typing. So as a prosecutor, I think there's going to be a lot of information here that would be very helpful in the development of the Healing to Wellness Court process. And so we hope that you're able to get a lot of information that will support that development. So this is an introduction and overview of the Healing to Wellness Court process, and we've utilized the Tribal Healing to Wellness Court's key components. This is a tribal adaptation of a foundational resource that was developed by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. And so the components that are going to be discussed today, along with other information that will be resonating with tribal youth judicial programs, is that it's a combination of these components and current resources that are offered to support judicial processes for youth.
What is a wellness court conceptually? It's an alternative court system, and it's within a branch called or known as drug courts, which emphasize judicial supervision for nonviolent drug-addicted individuals and are reviewed for regular progress with both sanctions and incentives for behavior. The drug court is a progressive strategy developed in the face of a failing traditional court system to assist individuals facing drug addiction and substance abuse issues and who were involved in the criminal justice system. This first court was in Miami-Dade County, Florida in 1989 and has achieved a lot of great outcomes for people and has been adopted widely in the last 30 years.
So as those courts have developed, recently there's been an identification of a need for juveniles. And so the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court is a judicial forum that provides the collaborative legal and therapeutic processes for youth who are currently engaged in alcohol and drug-related delinquent behaviors. And so the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court is really a collaborative offering of custom justice services for youth and intervention processes. And really, all of those things combine together to support the needs of the youth. And so it's a problem-solving court. It's a court that is working to support the youth as they seek treatment. And it's also an environment where they can truly seek wellness and have the opportunity to overcome the barriers and obstacles that maybe have been presented to them throughout their life.
Tribal youth, understanding the issues. Juvenile Healing to Wellness Courts serve tribal youth, and in looking at the issues that they're facing and the circumstances they're facing in their lives, they use cigarettes, engage in binge drinking, and use illegal substances at greater rates than the general population. And a study of Native American adolescents revealed the highest prevalence of alcohol and drug use and disorder. And this same study concluded that minorities, including Native American youth, are disproportionately affected by substance-related disorders. The same report found that, or a report found that binge drinking is more popular among tribal youth than any other racial or ethnic group, and that tribal youth through the age of 24 are more than twice as likely to die as a result of binge drinking than non-tribal youth. Alcohol use disorders are among the most severe health problems facing Native American people.
So we can really see that the development of these courts are responsive to the things that we know about tribal youth across the nation and different communities. However, we wanted to emphasize that if your tribe is wanting to develop or is in the process of developing a juvenile healing to wellness court, that there is not a singular process, that the court is going to be unique to the community, and that the services that you provide within are going to be based on the community's capacity and the collaboration that you have with outside partners. And we know that they're difficult to generalize because we are diverse, our cultures are different, our languages are different, the needs that our specific youth have are different, and our governments are different. So there's no reason to look at all of these components and think that they're going to look the same within every community, because they're not. And that's a good thing, because the youth are going to get the services that they really need that are pertinent to them. So we've tried to break down the process into 4 stages. And so if you're developing a court and you're trying to understand the process for a youth that's coming into the court system, we've said that there's a catalyst that's going to bring them in. There's preparation for them to become a part of the Healing to Wellness Court process. There is an engagement period where they're actually experiencing healing ways and things that are provided to them to support their needs. And then there's aftercare, which is the process where they've become autonomous, they've overcome some of the issues that they faced when they came into the system, and they're going to work toward having a healthy future.
The catalyst to healing to wellness, to entering that process, it may be through various referral processes at various stages. Maybe youth has an incident with law enforcement, so even before charges are filed, pre-petition, they may get a referral to a Healing to Wellness Court program or the process. It may be pre-adjudication after charges have been filed, but before a finding of guilt or a plea. And then post-adjudication is maybe after they've gone through their criminal case. That's at the point where they have an opportunity to enter into the Healing to Wellness process. And the how of it, there may be a number of agreements or processes, again, at different entry points for entering into the process. Referrals involving tribal interagency agreements with the police, so social services, tribal youth programs, probation, healthcare. There are a variety of referrals on interagency cooperation that can be used for tribal youth participants in Healing to Wellness. And this may also involve partner jurisdictions and non-tribal and state, county, or municipal entities. And to that end, the question of whether your tribe currently has memorandums of understanding to formalize those different partnerships with different agencies for the purposes of referring to the Healing to Wellness process. Does your tribe have an MOU in place that can be strengthened and or adapted to support your tribal juvenile Healing to Wellness court? Those type of formal agreements are best practices for juvenile Healing to Wellness courts and to formalize partnerships throughout the community and service providers.
Right. So Natalie, I know just in your work previously, have you had the opportunity to work cross-jurisdictionally, and how are some of those conversations started?
Well, sure. The tribal jurisdiction that I worked for in the Attorney General's office, we had to coordinate children's services for victims and children exposed to violence. And we, ongoing conversations, the conversations are going because the work is on a daily. But when you call together people for a special purpose and, you start to strengthen relationships and have productive meetings where, the partnership is sketched out, and I think it's important to have conversations and then move into MOU and formalizing various relationships. I think it's, it's meant to capture what's already happening and to, memorialize what all the parties feel is best in terms of, whatever procedures or policies they might agree on and across the board for tribal youth. And that's how we went about it. It's just opening up the conversation, strengthening our relationships, and then identifying our roles and formalizing them, in writing.
Right, and I know with other communities that we've worked with, there's been the process where there were already referrals coming into the system and MOU were developed to support the current referrals, and then we've also had communities that don't have existing MOU, and what they do is prepare exactly what Natalie's saying is this is what we want to do, and this is what we want to, how we want to impact our community, and they take that information to the cross-jurisdictional partners and start working on, developing those MOU processes. So we want to move.
And Anna, excuse me, Anna, I would just note as well that, in our jurisdictions that receive these grants, federal partnership is necessary, state partnership is necessary, and so is county and municipal partnership is all necessary. So one may craft a collective MOU for all the parties on a particular issue, like, say, the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, or when, and I wouldn't recommend this from experience, one can craft an MOU, between, one-on-one MOUs with each entity. But a collective MOU reduces your workload, and it also is something that everyone can, consent to and begin to fulfill and operationalize. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. I think it's important to hear some of the personal experiences. So as you start to develop partnerships and as you start to work with youth, the team will come together and develop a process where a youth will come into the Healing to Wellness Court. And so as part of preparation for the process, the Healing to Wellness Court team will work together to develop eligibility processes and clinical screening processes. You'll assess readiness for participants to engage within the system. There'll be a process for approval into the court, a youth agreement, and caregiver orientation processes. As well, when the youth come into the system, there's always a referral to qualified providers to provide further assessment. And this is because we know that the youth that are coming into the Healing to Wellness Court may be experiencing other issues, other things in their life, and just to gauge where they're at, it's important to have a full and thorough assessment of what their needs and strengths are. So screening is a process that's generally brief. It can be conducted by the team. It's to gather information, and it will usually entail an initial interview and a review of the information that's provided on the applicant's application. And so basically what you're trying to decide at screening is this person ready to engage within the process? And so there's usually a set criteria that the team has developed. You want to develop policies that know what the legal, clinical, and social criteria are going to be for the youth that are going to come into the court. Generally, there's an age range that you would decide on. There is a needs. What are the needs that are actually going to be able to be met? And so does your court provide the services that this person needs to be within the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court process? Screening can be for several criteria. This list is not exhaustive. This is just an overview of the types of information that can be at the initial screening. You may be looking at the age, the target population, the readiness for them to be within the system, the nature of the treatment, what are their needs, what are their strengths, what do they have going for them that's going to support them as they move through the process. As far as legal eligibility, some funding requires some special topical information about their past violence. You may want to look at that if you are to be working on federal funding dollars for this development of the court system. You're going to be examining historical or present trauma for the individual, and if you have services to support that. And then you're going to see, is there an existing substance use disorder? And so if this is the Healing to Wellness Court, is there a problem that the court can actually address here? And finally, you want to look at family, parent, and caregiver involvement. Because this is such an involved court system, it's important to understand if the participant is going to be able to meet all of the expectations of the court. And so these are just a few of the screening criteria. There's a lot of screening tools. There's a lot of things that you can screen, but we wanted to give you a sample of some of the things that are screened across the board generally. So screening is different from a full assessment. Screening is a process where you gather initial information and then you would refer on for additional assessments. Screening can be conducted by a qualified case manager, treatment provider, or anyone really working within the team as long as they're trained in the tools that they're using. So screening doesn't require you to refer the youth off to another office or to another program. You can become trained in screening tools that will support the development of your court. Clinical assessment is the secondary process. So in the event the youth is accepted into the program after the initial screening, there will be an assessment process by usually they say qualified professional. That can be a number of people, psychologists, social workers, individuals who are trained in the type of assessment that's going to be conducted. And this is really to obtain information to support the youth as they're in the Healing to Wellness Court process. So part of the process, if you remember at the beginning, is the therapeutic response. And the assessment is done to identify what the true needs are and how to develop a case process that's going to support the needs. So these are examples of some of the assessment criteria. The use of alcohol or drugs, mental health needs, history of abuse or other traumatic experiences, their well-being, their needs and strengths, and then some of the things that are crossover from screening tools and assessment tools. Some things that might be different are things like conduct disorders, affective disorders, anxiety disorders, attention deficit, and developmental disabilities. And these are the things that are different from screening because they require a more in-depth tool and process to really understand if there is actually a disorder there. And so that's why they recommend that you would be sending them to a qualified professional.
Ensuring that your system is trauma-informed is critical to ensuring a strong impact of your program on your tribal youth participants. And just for a basic definition we offer is, what is trauma? Well, trauma is an emotional or a physical reaction to any event that is witnessed or experienced by a child or an adolescent and is disturbing to them. So it's just for a basic definition of what trauma is. And the research has indicated that trauma is really an underlying issue with addicted tribal youth and adults. Some examples are physical or sexual abuse, witnessing violence, the loss of a friend or a relative due to suicide. Grief in general can often be a traumatic episode for somebody, and also displacement due to natural disaster, acts of war, terrorism. It's often said, and Dr. D. Bigfoot has said this to Congress, is that many of the experiences of American Indian, Alaska Native children are akin to the experiences of children in war zones. So being informed about trauma is very important to the success of your program overall. We know that Natives are more than twice as likely as others to become victims of violent crime, and victimization of our children is 20 out of 1,000 compared to 10 out of 1,000 white children. And trauma can be experienced as a single event, as a personal event that impacts generationally. Our boarding school history, removal from homelands and land dispossession generally, historical events such as relocations or massacres, and then the cumulative effects of all the above factors within our families and tribal youth. Trauma is extremely prevalent in Indian country, and becoming trauma-informed is important to having effective programs. Next slide, please. Some methods to consider, Dr. Bigfoot talks about how trauma-informed care, the trauma-informed approach should be integrated all throughout your program and all throughout your court, so that even the receptionist who answers the phone might understand that the individual, the relative she's dealing with on the other side of the phone, may be in an active traumatic episode or having active PTSD episodes and so forth. And so being informed about how trauma affects, all of the different interactions is extremely important. That staff awareness is key. to promote trauma-informed juvenile justice personnel and the services to protect and rehabilitate the youth, while also holding them responsible for their actions. And that's from 10 Things Every Judge Should Know About Trauma and Delinquency. NCJ SCJ is doing great work in this area. Another method to consider is to not just awareness, but is to identify helpers in the community to support the families. Juvenile Healing to Wellness is a community and a team-driven approach. And so there are helpers in the community that you can partner with who are outside of the systems and programs to address trauma throughout your program, and to help the parents and the caregivers understand trauma and how it's affecting them and their families, and how to better help their children through trainings and resource offerings. And we're just giving you kind of a brief overview of trauma and you know, a short definition. We will be offering 2 more webinars on trauma-informed care and approaches for tribal youth programs and juvenile healing to wellness courts later on this year in the coming months. So we just wanted to provide that in the context of how trauma-informed is extremely important to your juvenile healing to wellness program overall. Orientation for youth participants and family. Orientation process is important for youth and caregivers to consider. Some jurisdictions might provide for one-on-one orientations, and others might do a group, say, you know, periodically or monthly or on a regular basis. And this all helps to begin with a good relationship between the court and the family. It also helps to explain the expectations and the roles and responsibilities to all the parties involved. Again, this is a team-driven approach and a community-driven approach, and so this type of orientation can help to establish those good relationships among all the different parties who need to be involved in this and who need to understand the process moving forward, both the consequences and rewards, and also the legal outcomes for non-participation in the program. Healing, phased treatment plans. Treatment plans can be individualized by clinicians or trained advocates based on identified needs and strengths. It's really a roadmap for the healing journey that allows for flexibility for detours. And the team can initiate the parent being involved, the caregivers, as well as the tribal and cultural or spiritual advisor involvement. And the team can work together to provide comprehensive therapeutic legal processes. Phased treatment plans can be a variety of different things. These are some samples that you all might want to consider. Orientations, monitoring, clinical evaluation and assessments, court appearances and status hearings, case management generally, you know, being referrals, and this type of phased treatment is really best practice for our healing to wellness programs, ongoing drug testing, and so forth. So the phased treatment plan provides a therapeutic environment for participants and their families, and that's part of the key component, number 4. And the juvenile phase treatment plan won't look the same for all participants. The plan should be individualized, providing for counseling or alcohol or substance abuse treatment through adolescent-targeted type of therapies, evidence-based therapies and practices, family therapy, and as well as, and importantly, traditional and cultural components that are unique to the community.
Hi, Natalie. Sorry we had some sound issues here. So the phase treatment plan is there to provide the therapeutic environment for participants and their families. And we just can't reemphasize enough that it won't look the same for all participants. Because of all of the components that are combined and because of the individual needs of the youth that are in the system, the phased plan as a whole may follow some of the same processes, but it's going to be unique to that specific youth.
Judicial interaction and support. The court and the judge really are the leader in this type of program, and it provides the support, the motivation, the accountability, and even the prestige and the organizational leadership, not just for the participants who are involved, but overall for the team. And our judges should be trained in these type of treatment philosophies for adolescents and be informed on the latest research, including trauma-informed approaches, and understand generally the practices that are related to a successful juvenile tribal healing to wellness court. It's really important that the judge or judges, the judiciary, participate in regular case staffing, that they're available for frequent status hearings and updates, that they help to provide that motivation and education to the participants and families and the caregivers. And of course, their role as a judge is to hold them accountable in formal ways, but in respectful and effective manner as well. And importantly is understand the cultural and the ceremonial healing practices of the community that they're in, and to integrate those practices into all phases and stages of the juvenile healing to wellness tribal court process.
So we skipped ahead. As the process is developed, there is going to be an identification of who you want to serve as part of the team. And teams vary across the board just due to tribal capacity, the support that's able to be implemented within the system based on, the funding that you have available, the size of your department. But generally, the team will be comprised of a coordinator, some sort of monitoring or probation official that can support the monitoring aspects of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. There will be a behavioral health support person, someone that can support the substance use needs of the youth. There's cultural leadership and integration processes, so someone to support those needs. And then any other person that your team has decided that needs a role within your community. And so teams will not look the same. They will differ just based on needs of the community and the needs of the youth that are coming into the system. And so one of the components that follows the building of the team and the implementation of services is the application of consequences and rewards within the court. And so as part of the Healing to Wellness Court, incentives and sanctions, which we have referred to as rewards and consequences, are a major component of the Healing to Wellness Court process. So incentives are used to increase positive behavior, and consequences are utilized to basically redirect and target noncompliance with the plan. And what this does is hold the juvenile participants accountable for their actions. As well, it's the balance of accountability and protection for community effects and safety. And so by providing appropriate consequences to behaviors or noncompliance with the plan, it says that, this is a legitimate court process that is going to engage youth, and it's going to encourage positive choices and positive behavior, and it's going to hold the youth accountable for when they make decisions that are not in line with the plan. And so we want to increase the law-abiding behavior of the participant, and we want to prevent subsequent recidivism. So this process is about learning. Consequences and rewards, they're not utilized to punish. The National Council of Juvenile Family Court professionals have said that this is really an identification of needs. And so when there's a non-compliance, that's a way to identify a specific need. It's not to catch them, it's to support them and provide some kind of outlet to support. So these are examples of consequences and rewards that might be utilized within the Healing to Wellness Court process. And so some example incentives are encouragement, praise, recognition. There's traditional gift giving. There's courts that have implemented prize jars. These are sometimes called fishbowl, where they have an opportunity to get some kind of incentive for following their case plan. This can be tickets, cards, other tangible items. There's privileges. So as part of the case plan, maybe they have a certain curfew. One of the privileges that you can offer is an extended curfew, lessened monitoring. It doesn't mean that you're going to stop monitoring, that they're not going to have a curfew anymore, but it's just something to say that they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're being compliant, and you can trust them more to make the right decisions. Example consequences might be additional community service, a loss of a privilege. Many courts have implemented writing requirements just to give them time to think about maybe why they behaved a certain way or to acknowledge and be accountable for behaviors. And then in the furthest reach, maybe of just continued noncompliance might be, termination from the program.
Integration of traditional ways. The integration of cultural interventions are a unique characteristic of tribal juvenile healing to wellness courts. Incorporating traditional healing practices and tribal life ways are important aspects of success. In a tribal juvenile healing to wellness court, the research has indicated that culturally infused interventions are associated with lower depression, lower alcohol use, lower antisocial behavior, and lower levels of dysfunctional behaviors among Native youth. And just from my personal experience in working for tribal communities, it really is the culture that helps to bring the youth into investing in the program and the services that you're offering. And often, even in, say, a family that one might assume is very traditional or culturally involved, sometimes, the grandchildren or the younger people, they're getting caught up in something, like substance abuse or alcohol use too early. And they too need support in accessing their cultural ways and their spirituality and life ways. And the process for tribal healing to wellness allows for that to be integrated all throughout the program. Many organizations across the country that work with Native youth have made adaptations to evidence-based programs in order to increase cultural relevance and increase their effectiveness. And the communities and the youth are unique. There's no singular method for integrating culture into the court process. It is often a challenging process. And you need to look to your leadership, to your elders, and your spiritual support for integrating the culture into the tribal juvenile healing to wellness framework. And it can be a difficult task to bring people together, but here are some examples of how grantees and different programs have integrated their traditional ways and ceremonial ways into the healing to wellness process. You can smudge, you can sponsor sweat lodges, bring in people for storytelling and talking circles, participate in ceremonies, both at the individual level or at the family level. And there are also the preparation of traditional foods, the traditional singing, regalia lessons for powwow and other traditional dancing as well. Even wotakuye in Lakotas, utilizing your kinship terms, throughout your program and creating that family atmosphere throughout your process. I know Lakota thought and philosophy, addressing your elders in relative terms is something that helps to create a relationship that's culturally based and traditionally based, and then moving forward from there respectfully. And community connections and language lessons, all of these type of initiatives that are ongoing at the tribal level are ways in which you can integrate the culture, the language, the traditions into your juvenile healing to wellness process.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reemphasize that the cultural component of the healing to wellness court process is what makes it unique. And so we know that there are many juvenile drug courts across the country, but that specific aspect of the healing to wellness court is what makes it a unique process. It drives it into the unique community's needs and strengths, and it supports the idea that, our traditional ways, our indigenous ways, our ways of healing the community, we're integrating it into what is a Western model, but really what it's saying is that these are things that we've always known, these are ways that we've always known to work with the youth in our community, and now it's adapting it to really hold the youth accountable as part of a judicial process, but at the same time show that, these are specific things that we're doing to try to heal our community. And so I just hope to emphasize that meeting with people that can integrate these processes within the court system is really important, and having that cultural leadership on your team is something to identify early on. So we wanted to acknowledge that the Tribal Healing to Wellness Court for juveniles is not always the right place for some youth. In certain cases, the youth just isn't ready to engage, and so that's a readiness process that you can assess just through support of a qualified person. Some of the ways that we've seen that they can identify youth that might not be a right fit for a program may be, continued adjudications and repeated violations. So that might be a youth that just isn't ready to be a part of the program. They may be able to re-engage later, but there is a point where you may ask, a youth to move back into the judicial process that they were in before they came into the Healing to Wellness Court. Teams will work together to identify what processes would be involved with the termination of youth in the program, and some of these things might be just a direct unwillingness to comply. So this isn't an out. The treatment court isn't, well, I'll just do this so I'm not in trouble anymore. It really is the youth's decision to work toward healing. It's their decision to work a case toward wellness and to take on all the responsibility and the accountability. And so if a youth isn't ready to engage in the process, then they just might not be a good fit at that point in time. And then another thing we wanted to discuss is just program evaluation in general. And so if you're newly developing, this might seem like it's something down the road, but really evaluating in an ongoing way is really important to the program's development. And so as you start to provide services to youth, it's important to identify, what are we trying to accomplish, and what are we doing to make sure that the processes that we're utilizing are beneficial and they are working for the youth that we're working with. And so it's important to develop a monitoring and evaluation process for the program itself and to address some of the specific needs of the program, both the program's needs, its strengths, what's going well, what's not going well, and to do that as you're developing and as you're providing services.
Foundations to begin a tribal juvenile healing to wellness court. Just for ease of our viewing and to give us a nice graphic here, this is an overview of some of the topics that we've touched on here in the presentation. In 8 different boxes. And, first you really do need to understand your community, your tribal youth community. What are their substance use issues, and trends, and what currently is available to them to intervene. And then, looking at gathering your stakeholders from that process, gathering your elders, your community and tribal leadership, as well as tribal programs. And then you go about formulating your Tribal Healing to Wellness Court team from those 2 experiences. And then that team looks at planning and policy, procedures, looking at the case plan, and also other tools for support. And then from there, we touched on the partnerships and the memorandum of understanding for interagency and interagency cooperation and collaboration, whether for referrals or case management and so forth. Looking at the court materials and the handbooks, the forms, the templates, and the different plans is the next phase of that. And then case acceptance and actually, serving participants in your program and delivering services to them and continuing to improve and develop those court processes through monitoring and evaluation of your program, as well as your participants. And then lastly, looking at your training and your continuing education across systems and your sustainability planning for the future, should the program be of value to the community and be effective in serving the tribal youth. And while we have nice little arrows that connect these boxes in this slide, it's certainly not exactly a linear process, and there will be kind of overlapping orbits as these things are ongoing and moving contemporaneously. But these are the basics for your tribal juvenile healing to wellness court development, right when you start.
Yes, and I just wanted to say that we hope that this is going to continue as a series. Our next session that we're going to be presenting next month is going to be about partnership development. So today is really just the overview and the initial steps to starting a juvenile healing to wellness court. And so we hope that if you're listening today that you'll continue to take part in this series, because we hope to touch on every single one of these boxes. And so as you move through and developing your court system and the processes that you'll be engaging in, our next session is going to be about partnership development. And so one of the major components within developing the process is, who are you utilizing to provide services if you don't have that capacity within the tribe? And then who are your cross-jurisdictional partners? So in the event that you want to increase referral processes, how are you going to develop the partnership agreements, the MOU, the things that are going to substantiate some of those referral processes? And so if there's any questions, I think we can open that up now. And so after today, what phase of the process do you feel most comfortable with? And if you want to use the chat box at the bottom, you can type. And then I also wanted to mention that all of the information in today's webinar, there's a reference slide, and I think you'll find that many of the resources that are included on that slide will be really helpful if you are a newly developing court or if you're interested in developing a juvenile healing to wellness court.
There are no questions right now. We are available for questions, and this material will be available on demand at a later date. Here are some of the reference materials that were used to support this presentation, and those are also, and we have provided the links for that, and they are available to you. And I want to thank you for your time today, and I hope that this provided a useful overview of the Tribal Healing to Wellness Court process and concept. And I look forward, and we look forward to continuing to address these important topics in healing our youth.
And I see that we do have one question coming in. I want to wait and see if that can come through before we close out and see if we can provide a response to that. Okay, well, if you don't have any more questions for us today, thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this presentation, and we hope that we've been helpful to your work and what you're doing, and we thank you for your devotion to the youth in your community.